The best and most rewarding thing you can do is decide to walk in your God-given purpose. As somebody who used to live my life in the complete opposite way, completely out of alignment, living to appease to societal and cultural norms and expectations of myself, and then deciding to completely overhaul all of that and radically change my life and be obedient to what God is calling me to do, I'm going to tell you 10 important things that I learned about walking in your purpose and 10 things I wish I knew before I started to do this. It would have saved me a lot of struggling. So if you're interested, keep watching, because let me tell you, number 10 especially took me by surprise, okay? So the first thing I wish somebody told me about purpose is that purpose comes from God, not self. Let me explain. Before I was doing any of this, before I started living my life more intentionally and, focusing on being the best version of myself, etc., I had my life planned out. And I don't just mean in my career, I mean in several other aspects of my life that all aligned with what I wanted for my life, right? It was all about self. It was all about me. When I made the decision to let God come into my life and let Him lead me, He stripped all of that away from me, literally. Like, He took all of it. I had to surrender all of my plans, and it did not happen overnight. It took some time, but I realized that everything I thought I wanted, the lifestyle I wanted, the things I wanted, the things I thought I would do, all of it was based on my will, my ego. It was me just taking bits and pieces of other people's opinions and using that to create a life for myself that would be socially acceptable. But when I gave my life to God, He literally pulled me in the complete opposite direction. And nothing that I wanted to do then is what I am doing now. My life looks completely different. But I wish I had known in the beginning that it's not about what I want, it's about what God wants for me. You can make plans, you can have all of these things, because yes, He does put the desires in your heart, but you have to yield those desires to Him, right? You have to ask Him to come into your life and give you the desires of your heart. So it's not just the desires of your heart that you have right now that are 100% from Him. But I didn't know that, right? I just thought that if I had a desire for this, then that means that it was something that I was meant to have. And some of these things still hold true, but some of these things I realized it was based on ego and it was based on societal and cultural influences. And so I had to learn to surrender my will to God's will and let Him have His way in my life, right? And it's when I started doing that, that's when over time He revealed what my purpose is, and He gave me more instructions and continues to give me more instructions to walk in my purpose. The second thing is, you are the one who should do it like that. Let me explain what that means. When I initially wanted to create a platform, I did not start off with a podcast or with a YouTube channel. I started off with a blog, and I wanted to blog about the same things that I'm talking about right now, but I would look around and search Pinterest, search the internet to find other blogs doing what I wanted to do or talk about what I wanted to talk about, as a way to validate that this was a good idea, because if somebody else is doing it, then it must be good. Whatever it is you feel called to do, in whatever way you feel called to do it, the reason why you feel called to do it like that is because you are the one who's supposed to do it like that, right? So many other people have a YouTube platform or a podcast that talk about self-improvement and becoming the best version of yourself, right? That's what I do. But for some reason, you are here listening to my videos and not somebody else's videos, or you watch me and other people who talk about this thing because you get different things or benefits or value from each of us, right? Because we likely do it in a different way. The reason why we can all flourish in that space is because we have a unique value that we bring to whatever it is that we do, because that is what God wants us to do, and that is how He wants us to do it, right? So that's what I mean when I say you are the one who is supposed to do it that way. If you get an idea to do something, like create a platform, for example, it doesn't matter if there's a million other people out there doing it, and it doesn't matter if there's nobody else out there doing it. If you feel like this is from God, this is what He wants you to do, and He wants you to do it in that specific way, just because you don't see other people doing it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. Sometimes it's because you are the one who's supposed to be the first to do it. You are the one who's supposed to create that path in doing the thing that way. You are supposed to be the first, right? It's supposed to start with you. So I had to learn that, and I had to be comfortable with that. and let that show in my delivery versus trying to be like everybody else or trying to do what I saw was working for other people. The third thing is where you start may not be where you end. I started off this whole purpose thing with blogging, and I went in a completely different direction. And then I have the podcast. I started off one way, I'm doing something else, and there are other things that I am working on right now that I have not announced. Initially, when I started off with my podcast, I thought that was it. Like, I thought being a podcaster was it, right? And in the past 3 years, I've realized that's not it for me, right? God wants me to do other things. But that would be very hard for me to transition into. And initially, it was hard for me to transition into or to accept, because I thought that when He gave me, an inch, when He gave me a little bit of the plan, I thought that was the plan. I thought that was it, right? When He said start a podcast, I thought, oh, podcaster was it. I clung to the next step He gave, and I did not really give Him room to give me more instructions to evolve and do other things. I latched on to one thing and it hindered my growth and my progress. That's why I'm making this video and letting you know this now. Sometimes God might have you in a certain position where He says, okay, I want you to do this. I want you to create a store. I want you to create a platform. I want you to create content doing this. I want you to share your voice doing that. You cannot cling to that one instruction as if that is the only thing He wants you to do, and you cannot evolve from that. You need to just be diligent in the assignment that He has you doing right now and be faithful in that now, but still be flexible enough and adaptive enough so that when He gives you a new instruction, you can also be obedient to that without latching on or struggling to let go of the last thing He told you to do, because that could have just been for a season. That could have just been a stepping stone for your growth. That does not mean that's where He wanted you forever and ever. Amen. And that segues into my next point. So I'll say it now and I'll kind of merge them together, which is purpose is being faithful and diligent in the current season God has you in now, right? Whatever assignment He has you in now, you have to steward over where He has you right now, right? And I also got this from Pastor Jerry in one of his recent sermons, so I want to give credit there, Jerry Flowers. So what I mean is, like I said, initially I started off blogging. I wanted to talk about one thing, and then it was very hard for me to let go of the blog because I thought when He gave me the blog, then that was it. Just latch on to that. That was it. That's what I was going to do for the rest of my life, blah, blah, blah. Then when He said start a podcast after I sold the blog, then I thought the podcast was it. I latched onto that. I was like, okay, I'm a podcaster. That's the thing, right? So when I latched onto each instruction or each season, it made it harder for me to let go and step into the new thing that He was calling me to do. So I want to remind you that purpose is about being diligent in the season you are right now, because you will learn some things here. You will pick up on skills here. That is a part of the stepping stone, essentially, in your walk in purpose, but that may not be the final destination. We need to stop clinging to the final destination and just be diligent and faithful where God has us now, right? For example, in the story of David, when David was anointed, he still had to steward over the pastures. He still had to steward over where God had him now. They told him he was going to be in the palace, but he still had to be faithful and diligent where he was now before he got to the palace. And what he did in the pastures prepared him for the palace. So that's what I mean in being faithful and diligent. God will use every season of your life to mold you into who He wants you to be. But you cannot be in one season thinking about, this is it, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to latch on to this, God told me to do this, so this is it, and I cannot let go. And then, cling to that, make your whole identity be a part of that. And then when it's time, when He gives you a new instruction, you're wasting time because you're so connected and tied to the last thing He told you to do. It's about obedience, right? So if He says it's time to let go and move on from this thing, you have to be willing and able to do that. Be diligent in the season you're in, steward over where you are right now, but don't latch onto it like that's where He wants you to be forever and ever, and then you have problems letting go and evolving into that next stage of your life. The next point is marry the journey, not the destination, which I just alluded to, right? It's about the journey, not the destination. One of the biggest mistakes I made is being so attached to the destination. It's like, okay, well, if he said start a podcast, then the podcast is the destination. So I just have to thrive here and be the best at this thing, which made it hard to let go. But it wasn't about the podcast. It was never about me and what I wanted or the title or anything like that. It was about using my life to serve others in the way that he called me to do. And right now, he wants me to do it in a podcast. Back then, he wanted me to do it in a blog. Going forward, he might call me to do it in a different way, right? I just have to be fluid enough and marry the journey and not the destination. The process, the path, the journey, that's what life is all about. Not the destination, not the thing we think we want. It's everything that happens in between. Because if you marry the destination, you will have issues letting go of things. You'll have issues latching on to things. You will have issues being grateful for where you are right now. You'll have issues learning the lessons where you are right now that he wants you to learn in order to be able to advance you. You will have an issue in seeing the good in where you are right now because you think the good can only come from the destination, from the end result, from the final product. But most of the magic of life happens on the journey. Like Jesus healed all of those people and did all of those things on the journey. All of those miracles, like God parting the Red Sea for Moses and the Israelites to walk over, all of those things, raining the manna from heaven and all of that, all of those things happened on the journey, right, to the promised land. Not when they got to the promised land. All those things happened on the journey. But you are going to miss all of these miracles, miss the point of all of that, miss the lessons he's trying to teach you, and miss his goodness if you just focus on the destination, right? So marry the journey, not the destination. The next one is the delay is for your protection. Let me tell you something. I have been podcasting for 3 years. I've told y'all before, 3 years. I started when I was 24. My brain has fully formed, or at least started fully forming in the meantime. So the person I was when I started at 24 is not who I am right now at 27. When I initially started off, I was like, why is nobody listening? But I realize now that the delay was for my protection. I spoke from where I was back then. I spoke from the unhealed version of myself back then. If you believe God is calling you to use your voice in any way, even if he's not calling you to use your voice, whatever you put out, whatever you create, it's going to be from where you are as a person at that point in your life, right? So if you are not close to God, if you are not in a position where you feel like you can hear him, where you feel like you can receive instructions so that you can be obedient, if you know you are operating from a place of pride and ego and selfishness and self-ambition, then understand that everything you speak will come from that point. Everything you produce, the way you service people will come from that perspective. And a lot of it might be good, but sometimes because you are coming from a perspective of ego and pride, it might hinder some people's results, or it might hinder some people's growth depending on what you're doing, because you are teaching them from a place of ego, so they will likely gravitate towards ego versus gravitating towards God. You see what I mean? I did not start talking about purpose and, really honing in on like the internal stuff in the way that I'm doing it right now until I got closer to God. Before, it was all from a place of self-preservation because of my previous unhealed wounds. You see what I mean? So the delay was for my protection. My message is getting out to more people right now, and more people are saying that they feel like God is speaking to them through me and stuff like that, which is what I always pray before I record. I like seeing that because I want people to see God through me, not me. Don't look at me. I'm still a flawed human being, right? I'm just being obedient. I want people to see God through me, but they cannot see God through me if I am not close to God, or if I'm speaking from pride, ego, and self-ambition, right? Or arrogance. So the delay was for my protection. The delay is for your protection. You might be praying to God, begging God to reveal you to people, right? For virality, for an influx of customers, or whatever it is you're doing. But your business or whatever it is might not be at a point where you can handle the influx, right? Your self-esteem, your confidence, your self-concept, the way you view yourself might not be strong enough or rooted in God enough to not let the negative comments that comes from more exposure break you. Like, you may not be strong enough to withstand the negativity. You might be praying for God to send you more views on your content, send you more customers, etc. But you cannot handle it right now. You cannot handle the downsides that come with that right now. So God is delaying that for your protection, but all you can see is what you want. But in hindsight, when you eventually get it, if you do not give up, you will see, oh God, thank you. Because that's how I feel right now. So the delay was for my protection. The delay is for your protection. And last but not least, this is from a quote that I saw recently. And it's, sometimes it's not about becoming the best version of yourself. It's about unbecoming everything people and society told you that you should be, so you can get back to who you really are. I realized that a lot of the things that my purpose requires from me that I hesitated to do, or I hesitated to pursue because I thought wasn't me, was really trauma. God has revealed to me several aspects of my personality that is not actually who I am, but rather I stepped into that because of something I faced that hurt me. Let me give you an example so this makes sense. I used to say, I don't really like people that much. I don't like crowds. I don't want to do that. I don't want to like speak in front of people. I don't want to put myself out there. I just want to be in my shell. I just want to mind my business. I just want to be hidden, blah, 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 right? In the beginning, I assumed all of that was just because I was an introvert. I assumed all of that was just who I was, right? I adopted and accepted that identity, and thus I lived my life in that way. Because he was calling me to do different things that I kept thinking like, God, this is not me. This is not who I am. Why do you keep calling me to do these things? I've never even wanted to do these things. Why do you want me to do that all of a sudden, right? Like, is that really for me? So when I was in primary and secondary school back in St. Lucia, where I grew up, for those of you who don't know, I was kind of like a class clown, right? I would always like get out of my seat and go like right on the board or go do something crazy, because class is different in the Caribbean. You don't like get up every period and walk to a different class. We stay in one class and the teachers come to us, right? So we had our homeroom class, and every time the teacher would leave in between the next period, I would like get up and go talk to people. I was more social. And then all of a sudden, I became the opposite. And God had me really thinking about how I was as a child. I was more outgoing as a child. I wasn't the most outgoing person, but I was more outgoing as a child. I would do more things. I would speak up more. I felt comfortable enough to do that, right? And I would speak to a lot of people. I would talk to like everybody in my classes. I wasn't necessarily friends with everybody, but I would talk to everybody in my class, right? So God reminded me of how I used to be, and I'm like, how did I go from being that person to the person who I will go somewhere and I will leave immediately after because I don't really want to talk to people? It's because I changed my identity somewhere along the way, and I just said, you know what? Well, I don't want to see people. I'm an introvert. I'll just mind my business, stay in my own space. I won't talk to people. I won't go out of my way. And because I adopted that identity, when God told me now to create a platform to do all of these things, to use my voice, I hesitated a lot and I struggled because I was saying that's not me. But then he made me realize, no, you used to be that person. What happened? God started revealing to me certain identities that I adopted because of pain that I endured that wasn't who I was before those things happened, right? He was trying to show me that, no, this is who you are, but you let pain change you. I need you to go back to who you really are. Who you were, which is who you really are. I need you to go back to being that person because that's the person that I need for your assignment. So that's what I mean with my 10 points. Sometimes it's not just about becoming. Yes, you will have to become per se, which means to just like work on yourself, improve your mindset, improve your skills, blah, blah, blah. You will have to do those things, but sometimes who God needs you to be for your purpose is inside of you, but it's buried by a lot of pain and trauma. And it's your responsibility to unpack that so that you can unbecome this version of yourself that was created as a defense mechanism because of your trauma. So these are the 10 things that I've learned since deciding to live authentically and walk in my purpose. I really hope this helps you if you are trying to do the same thing. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next Wednesday.